Hello and welcome to your weekly dip into the ocean of electric car knowledge, brought to you from the gang at electrifying.com. On the show this week, we're going to be talking about the budget, VWs, and electric vans. Plus, we'll be attempting to answer your car buying questions and dipping into the post bag to find out what you've had to say. Welcome to the Kilowatt Half Hour. I'm Ginny.
And I'm Tom. Where have you
Hello,
been, Ginny?
Tom.
I haven't seen you for months.
I know. Well, I've been in America this week, so apologies. I'm slightly jet lagged. I literally got off the flight about 2 hours ago. So I've been out there to drive something that, as is the way, I can't talk about yet. So please tell me you've driven some good stuff this week, because otherwise we've not got a lot to talk about.
Well, I don't think I've done a podcast in a month. You've probably been inundated with complaints about that on the emails, I'm sure. But no, in that month I have been driving some things and looking at things. So I've got things to talk about, even if you can't.
Okay, I have got one thing that I want to talk about. I
Yeah.
saw a Cybertruck for the first time on the road.
Oh, what did you think? Does it make sense in America? Is it big? Is it turning
It doesn't
heads?
even. Yeah, I mean, just to put it into perspective, I saw it in the parking lot of a fancy hotel just off Sunset Strip. Then I saw another one driving along Sunset Strip, and then I actually saw another one Hollywood Boulevard. So those are the roads where, if it makes sense anywhere in the world, it's got to make sense on those roads, right? And it still looks strange. It literally looks like it's been driven off the set of one of the studios over the hill and has ended up there when it should be on a movie set. It's a thing to behold. I mean, it's massive. It makes you do a quick swivel of the neck as it drives past, because it looks so bizarre. It's definitely a car that leaves an impression, is what I would say.
Which is what I suppose the drivers
Yeah,
want.
you can
Were
thumbs
they
up.
wanting to be looked at, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to actually spend a bit more time with one, because I am heading back to America in a couple of weeks for World Car of the Year driving, and also for the LA show. And I'm going to try and actually have a driving one. So we shall see what it's like and report back. So go on, you do some reporting back. What have you been driving?
Well, sort of starting off, I drove a Moda E5, which, if you look on the website, you'll see what I thought of it, but I wasn't terribly impressed. It's quite nice to look at. It feels nice inside as well, and I think it's a car that's got showroom appeal. But once you start driving it, it kind of falls apart a bit. They seem to think that people won't care, and that it's just about the value proposition. But even then, they're in a sticky situation, because the monthlies on other rival cars, which are from brands that you've heard of, are so competitive at the moment that they have to go even cheaper, and they're not that cheap. So I don't know. I'd be concerned if I was them, but they've got a big dealer network, so maybe they'll make it work somehow. There's a lot of money behind it. I don't know, but that wasn't a highlight for me.
The highlight of that brief description for me is the fact that they feel that it doesn't really matter what it drives like.
Well, I mean, it's a sad thing. We drive a lot of cars, and we like to think, oh, right, there's the steering feel and that's the brake feel. Whereas I'm sure that a lot of people just A to B, isn't it? I mean, look
It
at
is,
some of
but come on, and I'm guessing that anyone listening to this podcast probably has perhaps more than a passing interest in cars. But even so, I mean, even my mum, who I can probably safely say is not massively interested in cars, she wants a car that's comfortable and that drives well and that goes in the direction she wants it to go when she turns the steering wheel. So. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, from the what the conversations I've had with the Moda so far, they're very much pitching at it. We're throwing it all in the kitchen sink, and it's all about all the equipment you get. And I don't know. I'd love to hear actually what people think. What matters to you more, how the car drives or how much equipment you get in it? Maybe that will help a Moda with their marketing. Let us know. Comments below. Or you can email us, podcast@electrifying.com. Okay, so that's Moda. What else have you been in?
So I went to a good fun day with Volkswagen, where they have 23 cars to test, and they just throw you the keys and they say, go and help yourself and drive some of them. Now, I concentrated on the electric stuff, obviously. So there was an ID3 GTX, which I enjoyed very much. Reminded me of your Born, perhaps a little bit softer.
Hmm.
possibly not as good looking, but again, just a great fun car, and you kind of forget the latest ID3s are a nice thing, really. And an ID7 GTX, and again, that's a car I like very much, especially in the estate form. I think it's an underrated car, but uh, again, who buys them? I'm not sure. We'd recommend one, wouldn't we? But
Well,
who
Vicky
wants
Parrott
big,
would
fast
recommend
estates?
one. Has Vicky
Yeah.
paid you to get a mention of the ID7 in on the podcast because she's not with us this week? She kind of sent you a WhatsApp and there's a bottle of wine waiting for you when we all get together this week to film.
What was interesting about the ID7 is I went from an ID7 into a Passat plug-in hybrid, and at the
Oh.
moment, the tax on those is quite comparable because the new Passat plug-in hybrid has above 70 miles of range, official or electric only range, and therefore it's 5% tax, and an ID7 is 2% tax. Now you might think, okay, well, the difference between those in terms of taxes is, about 500-600 quid a year out of your pay packet. Now that's a lot of money, but you might think if you're a company car driver doing a lot of miles, I'll pay that just because it means I can have the backup of having a petrol engine and I don't have to worry
Mm.
about charging. But that's all going to change, isn't it? After the
Yeah, should we
budget.
move on to the budget? Because you've been looking at a bit behind the headlines and you've had your calculator out, haven't you?
I
Um, I
have.
was
So,
I was catching up on a story that you put up on the website over at electrifying.com this week. So if you're a bit bamboozled by the figures that are about to come out of Tom's mouth and you
yeah,
need to have a second glance, it's all over there explained. But there's some
yeah.
interesting stuff coming down the line, isn't there?
Well, yeah, I haven't got the figures in front of me, which is very stupid. But from my memory, actually, I could probably get them up. From my memory, what it is that they are taking away a lot of the tax benefits for plug-in hybrids.
Mm.
So at the moment, there's that 5%, and it's going to go up by the end of the decade to like 18%. So that's huge if you think about
Mm.
the change in tax, and that's the kind of if you're now a company car driver, you might have a company car as it starts to ramp up and up and up because you tend to have company cars for 3 or 4 years these days. So you need to start thinking about that now. Do I want to have a Fairvet or am I going to go full electric? Now,
Yeah.
as we expected, the company car tax on electric cars is going to go up as well, but not that much. It's not that bad. So they're going to do 2% leaps, so it goes up to 9% uh, by the end of the decade. So that's still okay. And of course, petrol and diesel cars will go up by 1% as well. So the gap's narrowing, but it's still going to be much, much cheaper to have an electric car,
Mm. There
which
wasn't
is a
much
good
though,
thing.
was there? I mean, we were very much hoping we'd see that reduction in VAT on public charging to bring it in line with the VAT that's charged on home energy.
Yeah.
Um, but we didn't see that. Of course, we're not going to get any sort of financial incentives back. Part of me was hoping we might see something like the loan scheme they have in Scotland, which is
Mm.
the interest-free loan on a used electric car or a van or a motorbike, if that serves me right. If any of our listeners in Scotland want to correct me on that, please let me know. I have a feeling that's only an annual thing that there's a pot of money once it's gone, it's suspended. But that has been a brilliant scheme for getting people into used electric cars. But there wasn't really much else, was there, to be
Now,
honest?
the only other good news, which is quite big news, I think, for electric cars, is that there was this threatened they were going to bring the luxury car tax in for
Ah,
electric
yes.
cars as well. So
That's,
for
yeah.
people who don't know, if you buy a new car and it's above £40,000 at the moment, not an electric car, then in years 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, you have to pay a expensive car supplement on your road tax, which is £410 a year currently, on top of the whatever it is you pay for the road tax anyway. That applies to plug-in hybrids, petrol, diesel, whatever. Um, and that's obviously a bit of a sticking point. Mike Askew with his BMW i3 Rex has it, and it hurts his wallet every year when he has to go in and do it. But they were going to bring it in for electric cars as well from April. Now, they haven't said for sure it's going, but they did say, and I've got the quote now because I've got it up, the government recognises the disproportionate impact of current VED expensive car supplement threshold for those purchasing zero-emission cars and will consider raising the threshold for zero-emission cars only at a future fiscal event to make it easier to buy electric cars. So future fiscal, I don't know what that is going to
Well, it
budget
could be a
hopefully
budget.
in the
It could be
spring.
a,
Yeah,
any kind of thing they want to call, really, as long as they're
yeah.
making some financial announcements. That tax is so weirdly set because the last time I checked on that, the average cost of a new car, any new car in the UK, was just under £42,000. The
Mm,
average cost of an electric car was certainly higher than that. I think last time I looked, it was about 48,000.
mm,
So
mm,
I don't know. If you're
yeah.
buying an average new car, are you buying a luxury car anyway?
Mm,
And if you're buying, an average electric car, which that price is £48,000, I think it's the right decision for sure. But
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, 40,000 was kind of a mid-level Kia Niro, isn't it, or Niro EV? So
mm,
it was hardly a luxury car. I mean, the prices are coming down, but I think if they shift
yeah,
it up a bit, that's going to be helpful to everybody. And the other thing was that
okay.
rather than give kind of carrots to electric car buyers, they've used a stick on the petrol car buyers. So now they're doubling the first year road fund license on petrol and diesel cars. So even quite normal stuff like a full Puma is going to be twice the cost it was before. So they'll add an extra 220 quid to the price of a full Puma petrol.
I suppose it's a clever way to do it when the country's broke, isn't it?
Yeah,
Charge people more rather than incentivize to buy.
exactly.
Okie doke. Now, what I do want to talk a little bit about is some of the first tries that we've had coming to the YouTube channel over on the website over the last few weeks. Because I went off and drove the Insta, which was couldn't talk about for a long time. We knew quite a lot about that car, didn't we? And of course, Hyundai were the
Hmm.
winner of our brand of the year. But I mean, my driving impressions went live on that last week. Nicola went out to drive the Capri, which she discovered is very much like the Explorer. And we've probably said everything we need to say about the Capri, haven't we, on this podcast?
Hmm.
But I will direct you to that because the intro is very funny. And we're still waiting for the call that comes from Ford to tell us off. We don't seem to have got one yet, but every time I get an email from Ford, I think, oh, here it comes. You go and check the video out so you know what we mean. It's that Nicola's first drive of the Capri. And then Nikki, lucky Nikki, got the long straw and went to drive the A290, which I think it's fair to say everybody really loves that car. It sounds great, doesn't it?
It does sound great. I have one tiny little issue with it, but I think it looks a bit
Go
over the
on.
top. But as you know, I'm old and boring now. So my kids think it's very cool. I just think it's perhaps a little bit max power. Do you remember max
No,
power?
I do remember Max Power. Of course, I remember Max Power. I'm old like you, but I actually like the A290. I don't think it looks over the top. I think it's kind of sparkly and fun, and I can't wait to get my hands on one. So yes, so those
Mm.
videos have all gone live on the YouTube channel. So make sure you go and check those out. Have you got a bargain of the week for us, Tom? Have you been crunching the numbers on anything interesting?
I have that. There's a couple of interesting ones, and again, the sort of the proper bargains, if you like. So on the used
Hmm.
front, you remember that the Aura Funky Cat or the Aura Zero 03 was really cheap on a lease for a while, and
I
now
do.
some of those cars are going to the used market. So they're now cars with 1,500 miles are now or less than half the price they were when they were new. So £14,000 buys you a sort of 1,500 mile Aura Funky Cat, which is
Oh,
again tempting. And again, another one of the cheapies on a lease where I'm at the point now where I go, can I resist this? Nissan Leaf. Yeah, they were at kind of 180 quid a month on a lease. And this is a lease with a 3 years, 8,000 miles a year with a kind of 1,500 quid deposit. Yeah.
okay, that's not a bad deposit, is it? That's
Yeah. So that's
okay.
that's very reasonable. There's the Shiro edition. These must be the last that they've got at the back of the thing. So the
Yeah.
Shiro edition has pretty much all the kit that you get on the Techno, except it only has half leather, and you can only have them in white.
Oh,
£167 a month.
wow. That is a
I mean,
great way into an electric car, isn't it?
160. I know the Leaf's old, and I know it's only got a range of 170 miles or something, but you pay
But that
30 quid a
range
month
is
for tax, and yeah,
exactly, and that range is absolutely fine for most of us. A lot of
yeah.
people do not do these big long journeys that we imagine we do. For particularly if that is a second car in a family as well. where,
Yeah.
it's probably going to end up doing 15, 20 miles a day, if that. I mean, that's a brilliant, brilliant buy.
Yeah.
You're going to get one, aren't you?
I
You
think I
are. I
probably
can
am,
see it.
just because I think, well, just because even if you use it a couple of times a month, it's like, oh well, okay, well we haven't got that car, we'll take that. Use it as a station car, whatever. I mean, 167 quid a month. I mean, it's not
Well, you
nothing,
keep
but it's not far
it.
off, is it?
It is a really good buy, that, definitely. Okay, that was a good bargain of the week. Very happy with that. Right, what should we do? Should we move on to some car buying questions, because we've had quite a busy post bag over the past
We
couple of
have, haven't
weeks.
we? Yeah.
So we have, right. Let me kick off. This was on YouTube. Mark Dearden, 1697. Hello, Mark. So Mark was commenting on the Kia EV3, our car of the year, our electrifying car of the year. And Mark said, I'm not disagreeing with you. Good. Glad about that, Mark. But because I haven't had the chance to drive the EV3 yet. And I was very impressed looking around it in the showroom. But I would be interested to hear how you think it stacks up against the Renault Scenic, which might be more expensive in terms of RRP, but is available with some crazy good value lease deals at the moment. The Scenic seems similar on size, space, and range, perhaps doesn't match up to the EV3 on efficiency, ride comfort, and cup holders. Very few cars could match up to the EV3 on cup holders. On the other hand, it has the Google infotainment system and the most unobtrusive electronic driver aids I've encountered. What are your thoughts?
Well,
Interesting,
you've
interesting
driven
question.
both, haven't you? And you've driven a Scenic quite extensively.
I have
Which way would
driven.
you
I have
go?
driven. Yeah, it's interesting. I have driven both, and it is interesting because actually the Scenic is bigger in every way. It's got a bigger footprint. It's definitely got a bigger boot. It charges a bit faster as well, 150 kilowatt charging rate. That's 130 on the smaller battery, whereas the Kia is 120 and 128. I think with the EV3, for me, it's a real shame it didn't have that 800 volt architecture that a lot of
Mm,
Kias get, which gives you that really fast charging. However, that's expensive. So they've gone for 400 volt. They've still top up in 10 to 80% in half an hour, which is absolutely fine. And it keeps the prices down. So actually, the Scenic isn't. It's more Megane is the competition for the EV3. I think
mm,
it's a really tricky one. Efficiency wise, I didn't find the Scenic as efficient as I hoped it would do. I liked it a lot to drive. I think it's a really nice car, as I've talked about a lot on the podcast. And this is very much down to the individual. I personally don't like the stalk on the steering
mm,
wheel on Renault's cars for the gear selector. I just don't like the positioning of it there. I know other owners don't mind it and some people love it. So that's just down to you, Mark, but I would definitely look at that. But I think for efficiency and value for money, I personally would still go for the EV3. I also prefer the way the EV3 looks. I thought it drove
mm,
really well. So that would
mm,
be mine. But again, if you're looking for extra space, which the Scenic will have certainly in terms of overall space and boot space, and the monthlies are stacking up, you might decide. Oh, and the heat, and also a heat pump, if that matters to you. A heat pump is standard across the range in the Scenic. In the EV3, you only get it in as an option in the top line car, which I
mm,
think is a bit naughty of Kia. And it's the one thing that I'm a bit cross with them about with the EV3 is offer the heat pump across the range.
mm,
Don't force people into having to buy the top spec car in order to have it. So it just depends
mm.
what matters to you. I mean, just purely off car for car, I'd take an EV3 myself. What about you,
Mm.
Tom? I mean, from what you know of them
Uh,
both.
yeah, I mean the EV3 is all new and shiny, so you tend to
Mm,
grab those things. But I really like the Scenic, and the Scenics are
yeah.
practical. Occasionally, I think maybe you'd need that practicality, especially if you've got a family and you've got kids who need to throw bikes in the back and things. So I really like the Scenic. I think it's a good-looking car as well. So if the
But
lease
you
deals are
haven't you,
great, then
yeah, you, yeah, but you
I haven't
haven't
driven
driven
an
the
EV3.
EV3 yet.
No, I haven't. No.
And it has it's got a really nice comfortable ride, and I do think for the efficiency, I don't think the Scenic can
Mm,
match it on
mm,
efficiency. That will
mm.
be just for you, Mark. We As soon as we can get our hands on an EV3 in the UK, which shouldn't be too far off actually, should we do that as a twin test, as our first twin test with it? What do you
Good
reckon?
idea. Yep.
And
Mm.
let us know
And
actually in the comments. Go on, sorry, Tom, go.
No. I was just thinking you're saying 800 volt and also efficiency reminded me of something that I was doing this morning, which wasn't that long ago. But I was looking at the Mercedes CLA. It was the concept car, but it's got some
Oh,
very interesting things for the production car, which is going to be with us in the new year. And Mercedes, we haven't been terribly impressed with their electric car efforts so far. I think it's fair to say, but they seem to have taken it on board because this car and its new platform has everything on it you'd want. So 800 volt, so really fast charging, but it's super efficient. And they are saying it's going to be high 5 to 6 miles per kilowatt hour
wow.
in the real world.
Wow.
And one of the ways they've done that, because you think, oh yeah, well, how are they going to do that? It's got a gearbox, so it's got 2 speeds. Now, this is
Okay.
an interesting thing I didn't think electric cars needed. It's had it in the Taycan, and it had it in some of the trucks that Nicola and I drove. And the Taycan has it because they want to be able to accelerate quickly and still go at autobahn speeds. And I'm sure that's part of it behind here. But it just means that when you get up to a motorway speed, they can go to a higher like overdrive gear, and then it's more efficient. So yeah, that's
Interesting.
quite hopeful. It's a good-looking car as well. Um,
Is it? Yeah. And we got Nicola's actually shooting a video with that, isn't she? So we'll have that coming
yeah,
onto the YouTube channel very soon. I think hopefully within the next week or so. So do keep an eye out for that
yeah.
coming. Um,
There's another
what
there's
else have we
another
had in?
interesting. Sorry, there's another interesting bit of tech with it,
Oh, okay. Sorry,
um,
go on.
which I think it's a Euro Encap thing, so it's going to be coming to us all. And you might think, what? So it's got a sensor that knows if you've left your kid in the car. And if you have, it gives you a little alert and it sends you a text message. And then if it thinks it's getting a bit warm, it will put the aircon on. Then it will ring you to tell you that you've left your kid in the car. Then, if that doesn't work, it will ring anybody whose number it's got in its system to tell them that they've left the kid in the car. And then finally, if none of that works, it will call the police. And it
Okay.
senses there's a child breathing in the car. It can sense a
How does it know
newborn
it's a?
breathing.
How does it know it's a child and not a dog?
I don't know. Can you
And
not tell
also
the
more.
difference, Ginny?
Well,
I,
sometimes I can't. No, not really. But also, right, okay. I'm the mother of one. He's
yeah,
15. I've never once left him in the car. You're a father of two. Have you
yeah.
ever left them in the car and forgotten they were there?
No, but didn't David Cameron leave one of his kids in a pub? I think one of the Kardashians left somebody somewhere. But I mean, it seemed
Well,
crazy to me. But I think the response from Euro NCAP and presumably Mercedes is, "Hey, look, we've got the technology. If it saves one life, why wouldn't we do it?"
yeah, I mean, absolutely, and interestingly, it's what it makes me smile actually because Tesla have obviously prioritised the dogs because they've had dog mode on their car
Yes.
for a long time, which will control the temperature, let you cool it. It's a very interesting piece of
Yeah.
tech. Let's hope nobody ever has to rely on it, but I guess it's good that it's there. Should we move on to
Back to
some
the mailbox. Yeah,
questions?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go on then. Um, what
Regen
have we had
braking.
in?
Should we do that one?
Yeah, go on then. You do that one. Yeah.
Okay, so this is from Jeff Johnson, who emailed us. He said, "Afternoon, team. As someone who hopes to get hands on a new EV, I've been devouring a fair number of your YouTube videos. Excellent. On many of your reviews, you are critical or otherwise of a car's regenerative braking. Now, as a newbie to EVs, I understand the principle, and it seems eminently sensible to convert kinetic energy into electricity rather than wasting it as heat. However, I do wonder, why is it something the driver has to switch on? Should it not be the default mode of operation? Uh, B, why do many cars provide several degrees of regeneration? Presumably, the advantage of greater level is more energy in the battery. What are the disadvantages of using lots of regeneration? Should you be choosing a level dependent on the degree of deceleration appropriate to the road conditions? Perhaps do one of your excellent explainers on the topic."
We have talked about doing that for a while. We will
Yeah,
do
we have,
this,
haven't we?
Jeff. Yeah, we
Mm,
have. But let's discuss
mm,
it now as well because it is an interesting subject, isn't it? I remember the first car for me that really stood out with brake regen was the second edition Nissan Leaf. Just to return to
mhm,
the subject that is so close to your heart, Tom. I know how you love talking about the Leaf.
mhm,
There we go. This one's just for you.
yeah,
And it had the e-pedal button for the first time, didn't it?
yeah,
And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And I remember at the time, just asking the press office why you couldn't just why it reset every time. So you had to go in, select the e-pedal, and then when you went back in the car the next time, it had, it should be the default, basically, is what I'm trying to say in my jet lagged state. And they didn't really have an answer for me. So I don't know if there is an answer, whether it is in some buried deep in some legislation somewhere that it can't be set as a default. I don't know. Do you know the answer to that one? Because I don't.
I
But I
don't know the
agree. I
actual.
think, yeah.
Yeah, I think that the levels. I think that's ultimately a question of taste. So I've got
Yeah.
a Fiat 500e on test at the moment, and it came in the eco mode. And in the eco mode, you lift your foot off the throttle and you get thrown through the windscreen. It's amazingly strong, the regen. And I couldn't get on with it at first because it's just not what I'm used to. So I put it back into normal mode and set off, and then it didn't have enough. And you just have to find some sort of happy compromise. So if you are new to electric and you get in it and it doesn't have any regen, it just feels like a normal automatic. And therefore, that's what a lot of people will like. And I think that as you get more used to electric cars, you'll want to add more and more regen to it.
Yeah.
But
And
the latest cars that have radar cruise control, which they have anyway, have that automatic regen, which is something I absolutely love. And on the best cars, you don't even notice it's happening, do you? Where
no.
it freewheels down a motorway when there's no traffic in front of you, because that's more efficient than doing regen, is not to brake at all, like you would on a bike. And then when it senses that there's a corner coming up, or it senses that the traffic's slowing down in front of you, then it brings in heavier and heavier regen. That's the perfection for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a really brilliant system, that automatic regen. It was interesting because when I drove the Rolls-Royce Spectre, their first electric car, about the only thing I didn't like on that car was it didn't really have regen. It was very poor. And I had a chat with the engineers about it at the time. And I was quite surprised because I thought if anything suits it, it's that feeling of sort of quite graceful when one pedal driving. It would have been that car. And they said it was a conscious decision because they didn't want to scare their owners off. So they know that a lot of people would be transferring, into that car first time in electric, and they just wanted it to be as close to an ICE driving experience as possible, which personally I thought was a bit of a drop ball, really, that I think they could have, really utilised brake regen more. So I think, Jeff, the answer is that I think for a lot of people it is new. And like Tom said, that ability to select different levels, I like strong regen. I use it all the time when I'm sort of driving around town. True one pedal driving, I just really love, but that's not for everybody. So I think it's there. But I do agree with you. I think it would make a bit of sense for it to be a default, but I have no idea whether that's not done because of any kind of legislation. We shall try and find out and put it in and explain it for you, Jeff. Okay, should we do another car buying question? Okay, another scenic question, but this time I get to talk about the Enyaq. Yay! William McBride emailed us. Hello, William. William says it would be useful to take into consideration spec levels alongside pricing. My dad is wanting to trade in his Skoda Karoq for either an Enyaq or a Scenic. He is really fond of the Enyaq, but not as much as Ginny. That would be impossible. Agreed. On the surface, the Enyaq is cheaper, but on closer inspection, it is the skeleton spec, not including some essential basic equipment like a heat pump. The Scenic, on the other hand, has everything you need. From the entry-level model, plus the Scenic costs £350 a month, and the Enyaq is £450 a month, both with a 3k down payment. It's clear Renault do much better finance deals and out-of-the-box packages than Skoda do. In light of this, would you recommend the Scenic over the Enyaq? Oh, do I have to answer this? Can you take this one? I don't feel.
Well, I think
I feel like slightly disloyal.
It's a strange thing about finance payments and leasing payments, isn't it? That they bear absolutely no relation to the list price of the car. So all we can base things on in the first place, because the finance payments are changing all the time, is the list price that we've been given. So you compare an Enyaq and a Scenic, but then, I mean, 100 quid a month. It's a huge difference, isn't it? And you look at the bargains of the week, and there'll be something like there was one ridiculous month where you could have a Lotus.
I remember that.
What's the big? What's the big Lotus?
Was it the Electra?
Electra. Yeah,
Yeah.
was £1, and with 1,000 horsepower, was £1 a month cheaper per month than a Fiat, an Abarth 500. It's like,
It's
how does that?
insane.
Because there were no deals on the Fit on the Abarth, and there were deals on the
Yeah.
Lotus. So this is why when I see a car, I think, why did that person buy that car? And then whenever I see a Honda Ernie or an ENY1, I think, oh, what made them buy that? And then you realise it's because it was 250 quid a
Aesthetics.
month versus 450 for a rival, and
It
that's
is.
how people end up in these cars.
But William, it's something we're really conscious of, isn't it, Tom? We do talk about it a lot. We just
Mm,
literally, for that reason, we've not been able to find a way around it. And I don't think anyone can. So we have to go off the list prices in those direct comparisons. We do try and think about the spec certainly on the cars that we've got in to test. But there's so many variables. And that's why it's always a really good idea to check over at electrifying.com, because you're always updating the really good
mm,
lease deals, aren't you? And the good offers that are coming out. We're going to start putting those out on our social media channels as well. So if you're not following us, head over there, and it's at electrifying.com. And we're just going to start pushing those out more, because as Tom said, the deals just change from week to week. And yeah, we'd be constantly updating videos all the time, which would send poor Manos into a complete frenzy, who is our head of video. He already has a hard enough time with it as it is.
mm,
Okay, let's move on now to the response to the Electrifying Awards. So we had our
mm.
awards. Loads of love for the brand of the year, actually, Hyundai. We had a lot of messages in about this. Christy MD over on YouTube said, absolutely agree with your Car Manufacturer of the Year award. We have two Hyundai EVs, a Project 45 Ioniq 5 and a Kona, both excellent cars. And the Ioniq 5 is shortly to be replaced by a 2025 Ioniq 5 Ultimate with the bigger battery and the rear wiper. Go Hyundai, great choice. Love the show. Keep up the good work of keeping accurate EV news out there, Christy. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, they're just a very rounded brand, aren't they, Tom?
Yeah, they are. I think the breadth of the range that you can get from a Hyundai's, as in not range miles, range as in the number of cars is great, and they are really good things. I think the Ioniq 5, all the things that Mike was irritated with in his Ioniq 5, for example, they fixed as well, and that's the great thing about these Korean and Chinese manufacturers. If something's wrong, they fix it quite quickly, don't they? They really listen to their customers, like the rear wiper.
Yeah. Yes, they do. Absolutely. Um, Again, Bernard Hilton, the thing about the Hyundai EV cars is, they will work. They are comfortable. They are economical. Enough said. All part of the reasons why we decided to make that our brand of the year.
Yeah, yeah. The car of the year, that went down well too, didn't it? So,
Mm,
Watto UK said Kia been absolutely smashing it in recent years. I knew when I saw the finished version of the EV3 that it was going to be my E-Nero's replacement. So I just went ahead and ordered a GT Line S. That's the poshest, isn't it? I think.
it is.
Right after the order books opened up. Been told by my dealers it'll be here mid-November. So next week potentially. That's going to
In
be
the future.
exciting, isn't it?
Oh yeah, what are UK? Would you please do as a follow up? Drop us drop an email to us, podcast@electrifying.com, or just a comment, just to let us know when you've got it, what you think. Because there's always this thing, isn't there, when you've kind of really liked a car, when you've driven it, on a test, and we don't spend that much time in them on these initial tests, do we? You're
Mm,
going out there, you're trying to film and get all your thoughts together, and we might have only had a couple of hours with the car. So
mm,
it's always great then when we get feedback from owners as well. So yeah, do let us know what you think when you take delivery of that.
mm.
And I can't miss. Okay, Mr. Akron Yahoo, but that might not be the
Might
right way
be
of saying that.
Emracron. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, the
Yeah.
Kia EV3 looks like a real winner. Much better than last year's pick, the EX30.
Yeah, we
Okay.
probably. Yes, you
Mm.
explained about the EX30.
I'll explain. In our defense, the EX30, as I've said, we often drive cars for a couple of hours, and you're on an event and on a launch. And that was the case with the EX30. We got early drives of that car. We were very impressed with the package, the pricing. There were niggles and issues. And we were told, as you were very often told, Tom, you'll back me up on this, these are just pre-production cars. These are just little niggles with, charging rates or software issues. It's all going to be sorted out by the time, we get the production cars ready. And all you can do is take manufacturers at their word. And if they say that these are pre-production cars, and it's a very common thing, we generally will often, first drives will be in them. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case with the EX30. And I think if we were to go back and knew what we knew maybe 6 months later, towards the middle of last year, we might have well have into the middle of this year, we might well have reconsidered that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think they were using the customers as the test pilots on that, and I don't think that's good enough. And I think, from what I understand, they're really good now. The EX30s, customers are really happy with them. I'm happy to recommend it again.
And that was the interesting thing that we very much learned from that last year. So when we went out and drove the EV3, and both Vicky and I had driven that car, there was none of this. It's a pre-production, it'll be fixed, this will happen, that will happen. They were just very, well put together cars with no niggles and no issues on them at all. So yeah, yes, I think it's a good pick. We're very happy with this year's car of the year.
Mr. Stovey's 2444 said, I went to the Kia EV3 in Insta launch. Insta's a great little small EV. The Kia will be my next EV to replace my current Kona EV. Great decision, your car of the year. I think future decisions will need to be based on buttons and rear wiper. I think they pretty much are anyway, aren't they?
They are for us, I think, all of us.
Does the EV3 have a rear wiper? Oh, sure.
Yeah, it does.
I'll have a look at a picture. Oh, good.
It does. No, it does. It does.
Yeah.
It does have a rear wiper. It's hidden away at first. Go on.
Oh, is it from the top and it swipes down?
Yeah.
Is it like a Range Rover? Yeah. Talking of buttons, this Fiat 500, which I drove today for the first time again, it's got too many. It's got a button for everything. It's like a piano across the center of the screen. There's buttons to adjust where the air goes and everything. I was like, how do I do that? I don't know. And then the screen, it's got tiny little icons, so you have to, if you're trying to do something on CarPlay, you're having to use your little finger in order to get it. But if you want buttons, get a Fiat 500e. That's what I can say.
And we've had one person who doesn't agree with our choice. Madman Donna 1, all good winners. Agree with them all, barring the fact I hate the look of the EV3. It's ugly to me, but still a decent car. Oh, okay. Well, each to their own. Fair enough, absolutely. And then we got a bit of love for the Citroen EC4, our used electric car, Philip Taylor 7902. Great to see the EC4 recognised. I've had one for 2.5 years and couldn't be happier with it. And that's the kind of car it is, isn't it? Understated, keeps people happy. And as we said, often underrated. And there are some really good deals around at the moment. So if you are in the market for a used electric car, don't forget we've got used electric car listings over at electrifying.com with loads of buying guides and explainers as well.
The charging network of the year, though, there was some disagreement about that. So Jeremy Davies 4620 says InstaVolt, when Tesla are almost half the price. And Chris MH3VF said, I cannot believe you've done an awards show without at least mentioning Tesla. I can only assume it's because they don't pay you. Well, not many other people pay us either. And we do say some quite nice things about Tesla. What I will say about the charging network and Tesla is it's basically the coverage. So if you have a Tesla, it's a brilliant charging network.
Unbelievable.
If you happen to have one of the ones that's open to all cars on your journey, it is also brilliant. But it's still patchy. There's not enough to give it the kind of network coverage that we would like. So an InstaVolt, you're quite likely to be near one if you're going on a big journey. Whereas Tesla, you're not. I drove from London to Liverpool. I wanted some fast charging near Liverpool because that's where I needed to charge. And I would have loved to have gone to a Tesla, but there isn't a Tesla one that's open to a Lexus driver anywhere near Liverpool. So you can't give it to a charging network if the network doesn't have decent coverage. That was one of the things we considered.
Yeah, Richard Smythe on YouTube also had an interesting comment though. Not sure about your Instavolt choice of chargers. Apart from being one of the most expensive, I believe there are only 6 chargers to cover the whole of Northumberland, mainly at McDonald's. We have 3 times as many Ionity chargers, which are both much faster and cheaper. Please think about us up north when decision making. Great show, by the way. Thank you, Richard. I think what we looked at for this, and we did talk about Tesla potentially becoming, giving it to them, but it was, for all the reasons that we love Teslas generally, but we also love the supercharging network. And as Thomas said, Tesla don't pay us, but then none of the others do either. So we don't get paid by anybody for the cars that we like, or the charging networks that we mention. What it came down to was exactly that. It was about the spread, and I know that there's areas like Northumberland where perhaps the spread isn't as good. But I think when we looked at Instavolt, it's spread around the UK generally, but also the fact it was reliability for us. And it was the one network that when we sat down and we talked about it all as a group, it's the network that we consistently seek out for reliability. Now, I know that it's not the cheapest, and that didn't come into this in a big way. What we were looking at was this: if you're out and about and you need to top yourself up with 100 miles to get home, which is the network that's going to be reliable and will most likely work and will deliver the power quickly. And Instavolt was the one that we all came down to. What I'm going to try and do is think for next year, we might throw this open to all of you that listen to the podcast and follow us on social media and come to the website. And we actually might try and find a way of getting you guys to vote for the charging network of the year. So I think that, this was our choice this year, but I think, let's try and get everybody involved next year. I'm sure there's a way that we can do that, because it is difficult, to decide on any of those things, but it was definitely the one that stood out for all of us, wasn't it, Tom?
Yeah, I think also that there's about the problem of payments. So for both Tesla and for most Ionities I've ever tried, you have to use an app. And so if you're standing there in the rain and you're trying to make sure you've got reception and, yes, I'm at this one, what one I'm at that one. Now, again, if you've got a Tesla or if you've got a car that will recognize Ionity, it's great because you just plug in and walk off. But if you haven't, what you really want to do is just get your credit card out, put it on the thing, and then walk off knowing it's going to charge. And both those don't yet have that. So that's another reason we preferred the Instavolt.
Okay, let's move on from charging to pricing. We had a couple of questions about the Renault 5 pricing. The Joe T81 said, I'm not convinced you can give an award for best value to a car without the full pricing being released. I think the team have driven some of the top versions, but know the entry level price. What if the price walk is quite strong? Okay. And Octarine HK said, could we not include cars that you can't actually buy? The Renault 5 doesn't even have a list price. Now, it's very important for us to say that we, of course, do know the pricing before we announce a car as the best value car. We also know what the walk price is from entry level to top of the range. Now, we can't talk.
Should we explain what price walk is? That's quite a marketing term. I'd be surprised if Joe T81 doesn't work in marketing, because it's a strange thing. But that just means how much it is to go from the L to the GL to the GLX in old terms. So and how much that it costs to go up from one. Yeah.
And battery sizes and all of that. So it's basically entry level to top of the range. Okay. So we did have all that information. That information's still under embargo, but we do know these things, and we made a big effort to talk to the brands about what monthly payments were likely to be. So all of that was taken into consideration when we made that the best value car. So yes, we're aware of specs and pricing.
Shall we make a promise that if we see the prices and it's not as good value as we expected, we will make a very public retraction of its best value award, maybe with a placard outside Renault HQ or something, because I think we're fairly confident that it will be what they've told us it will be, aren't we?
That's a really good
enough
idea.
To give it an award.
I think we're confident enough to be able to say that, yes, we will. If it doesn't stack up with what we were expecting and had been off the record told, then we will retract. So yeah, please don't worry about that. We absolutely do know the price, and that was all factored in. Do you want to? Should we wrap up this week's episode with one of my favourite comments of the last couple of weeks, Tom?
Rob Smith 1A, who says the Renault Zoe has door bins designed to hold a wine bottle. I'm not sure they're good enough for but also good for baguettes though. They probably are.
I didn't know that. Is that true that the Renault Zoe door bins were designed to hold a wine bottle, or is that a happy
I don't know. My
is it a happy
my
coincidence?
my, my neighbour has a Zoe, so I'll go and knock on the door and say, "Can I try to fit a wine bottle in your car?"
It's more that I'm just
Uh,
intrigued as to whether that was actually part of the design process. That this is like a measure in France that
yeah.
it has to
Well,
fit a bottle of,
yeah,
Beaujolais Nouveau has to be able to fit in the door bins of a Renault. Maybe we can try and find that
yeah.
out for
Well,
next week.
I had a French car that had a wine bottle holder, which was Citroen AX. Do you remember
I
that had a
do.
little
I don't
elasticated wine bottle? I think they officially said it was for a bottle of Evian, but it was quite clearly meant for a bottle of wine.
Excellent. I am for that. I am not for drinking those wines on the go. Absolutely not. But it's always handy to have one around for emergencies. Right then, should we wrap up? That's been the Kilowatt Half
Well, why
Hour.
not?
Do,
Yes.
as always, let us know what you think. You can drop a comment below here on the YouTube channel, or you can email us all your car buying questions, podcast@electrifying.com. If you aren't already, please do subscribe to the channel so you know when all our videos and podcasts land. And if you're listening to this on one of your usual podcast platforms, please do follow and drop us a comment and, rate us and all that stuff, because it helps to get the word out there. But for now, from me, goodbye.
Goodbye.